Hey guys, welcome back for story time. We are gonna keep reading Dr. Proctor's Fart Powder by Nesbo. Please don't lick my leg. We are on chapter 17, Life in the Sewers. Nilly was in a free fall. He had once tried the water slide at some water park or other, but this was totally different. His body whooshed like a torpedo toward the center of the earth until a bend in the pipe flung him to the left, and then to the right, and then straight down again. He felt like a cowboy riding a wild horse of water, and he couldn't help himself. He just had to yell, "Yee-haw!" The pipes were exactly big enough, with exactly enough water to soften all the falls and turns. He was carried farther and farther down, and although it was getting both darker and colder, he was having so much fun and things were glowing so green around him that he wasn't thinking about being wet or freezing or cold. And he realized why that rat in their cell had swum and scrambled all the way up into their toilet. This was the roller coaster ride of a lifetime. It felt like such an adrenaline rush in his stomach every time the pipes turned and Nilly plunged into a new free fall that he hoped the ride would never end. But it did have to, of course. And it did. Rather suddenly, too. The walls of the narrow pipe disappeared and he was stretched out into the air as flat as a pancake and saw something black approaching with alarming speed. Then the black thing hit him. Or, to be more precise, Nilly hit the black thing. No one has ever witnessed an uglier belly flop in the Oslo sewer system. Brown, slimy goo sloshed up against the walls, and boy did it sting. Nilly felt like he was lying face down in a frying pan. He stood up and discovered that the water only came up to his waist. He looked around. Besides the glimmering green light coming from him, it was pitch black. And once the sloshing had subsided, it was completely quiet too. But yuck, did it stink. It smelled so bad that the author advises you to do the same thing Nilly realized he had to do. Stop thinking about it. What was I thinking about? Nilly wondered, since he wasn't thinking about the smell anymore. Right, that I need to find a manhole cover. And with that, Nilly started wading through the sewer system, looking for a way out. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as you might think to find a manhole cover in a sewer system after the sun has set. The reason being that the sun is no longer shining through the manhole cover's small holes that are designed to let water in from the street. And although Nilly was glowing, the light didn't reach far enough to illuminate the shafts above him. But he didn't give up. Good perseverance. After Nilly had waited for a long time and quite some distance, he heard a hissing sound. And he thought the hissing sound must be coming from a manhole cover, because obviously hissing sounds don't come from the sewer. Who the heck would be hissing down here? He thought. But he wasn't totally sure and noticed that as he approached the location where he thought the sound had come from, his heart beat faster. A lot faster. And as he rounded the corner, he froze and stood still, completely still. Stiller, actually, than he'd ever stood before. Uh-oh. Because he thought he'd seen something. Something that had gleamed at the very edge of the circle of the green light. A row of much too white, much too sharp, and most of all, much too big teeth. Because teeth that big and that sharp should not be down in the Oslo sewer system. They should only be found in the Amazon River and thereabouts, and in a dreadful picture on page 121 of Animals You Wish Didn't Exist. More specifically, in the mouth of the world's largest and most feared constrictor, the anaconda. It had been a long time since Nilly had read the anaconda chapter in the thick old book from his grandfather, but now he could clearly picture every single dusty word. And Nilly realized that he was in trouble. First of all, because he was standing up to his waist in what, according to his grandfather's book, was the anaconda's favorite element, water. Not very clean water, but water all the same. Secondly, because Nilly was probably the most visible thing in the Oslo sewer world right about now. A transparent, glowing green boy. And thirdly, because even if he hadn't been a glowing larva, there still wouldn't have been anywhere to hide. So he kept standing there, and there was that hissing noise again. And there were those teeth gleaming in the light again. And they were attached to the biggest mouth he'd ever seen. On each side of the mouth, an evil anaconda's eye staring at him. And in the middle of the mouth, a red split anaconda tongue was vibrating. And Nilly had to admit that even the dreadful picture on page 121 didn't do the creature justice. Because this was much, much worse and way creepier. The mouth came toward him relentlessly. I'll turn back. I'll show you the glasses picture. Eee! I would not want to run into an anaconda in the sewer. It's the last place I would want to run into an anaconda. All right. And now, as Nilly is about to be eaten, maybe you hope that something will happen at the last minute. Something completely unlikely. The kind of thing that never happens anywhere besides in stories just as the hero is about to meet his demise. But nothing like that happened. All that happened was that Nilly slid right down the gullet of the giant snake, glowing all the way, and only 2 days before Independence Day. Nilly? What's for that? A full moon hid behind the cloud over Cannon and A full moon hid behind a cloud over Cannon Avenue as if it didn't dare watch. Truls and Trim stood by the fence to Dr. Proctor's yard. "Breaking in is fun," Truls whispered. "Breaking in is fun," Trim whispered. But even though they were whispering, they still made too much noise. The moon emerged from the clouds and cast shadows that ran across the overgrown yard like big men in hats and capes. "Maybe I should stand watch out here while you go in and get the fart powder," Troll suggested. "Shut up," Trim said, staring at the crooked wooden house in front of them, which didn't have any lights on. The house was so small in the daylight. The house that was so small in the daylight seemed enormous in the dark. "Are you a tiny bit scared?" Truls asked. "Nope," Trim said. "You?" "No way, just wondering if you were." "Come on," Trim said, and climbed over the fence. When they were on the inside, they stood still and listened. But all they could hear were a couple of grasshoppers that had lost track of the time, and the wind rustling in the pear tree and making the walls of the house creak and groan like an old man telling dusty old ghost stories. They waded through the grass toward the house. Truls could hear his own heartbeat, and maybe Trim's too. When they got to the cellar door, Trim held the crowbar up. "Wait," Truls whispered. "Check if it's locked first." "You idiot," Trim hissed. "You don't think he'd be so stupid that he would keep a fortune's worth of fart powder in an unlocked cellar, do you?" "Who knows? You want to bet on it?" "I'll bet you a bag of fart powder." "Okay." Truls pulled down on the door handle and tugged. And do you know what? It turned out that the door was actually locked. What did you think? That someone would be so stupid that he would keep a fortune's worth of fart powder in an unlocked cellar? "Darn it," Truls said. "Hooray," said Trim, pressing the tip of the crowbar in between the door and the frame and pushing on the other end. It creaked a little. It creaked a little more. "Wait," Troll said. "Not again," Trim groaned. "Look at the window." Trolls looked at the window and then eased up on the crowbar. "Broken," he said. "Must have been some pranksters throwing rocks. Or some rotten, sneaky thieves who beat us to it." They climbed in through the window and turned on their flashlights. The cones of light from their flashlights slid over all kinds of strange equipment, test tubes, barrels, drums, tubes, glass containers, and an old motorcycle with a sidecar, and stopped on 2 enormous mason jars. "The powder," Trolls whispered. They moved closer and shone the light on the labels. The writing on them was the kind of swoopy lettering Mrs. Trobe had tried to teach to them, but that neither Trolls nor Trim had really gotten the hang of. "Dr. Proctor's totally normal fart powder," Trolls read one with difficulty. "Fartinot powder," Trim read on the other. "Keep out of reach of children." "Heh heh," Trolls laughed. "Ho ho," Trim laughed. "This'll make Dad happy. And we'll get a swimming pool. Come on, bro." With that, they each grabbed a mason jar and snuck back out the same way they'd come in. And only the moon saw them as it timidly peeked out from between the hurrying clouds. And maybe one person in the red house across the street. At any rate, the curtains in one of the windows on the second floor moved a little. All right, guys. That is where we're going to end for today. Chapter 17. We are now on... Ooh, we have read 200 pages of this book. And there are only... Oh my gosh. 265. We have such a little bit left. I bet that we can finish this before the end of the school year. All right, kiddos. Have a great afternoon. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to the people that you're with. Miss you. Care about you. I'll see you later.